I spent some time yesterday in my office with a girl. And it reminded me that I was probably going to have some splaining to do this morning. The girl in this case was about this tall, just learning to walk. She could say yes or no, and that was it. But she didn't really talk a whole lot to me. Instead, she had what her father told me was her playlist on Spotify. And she said, you can put her playlist on, and you can leave her anywhere you want, and she'll just sit there listening to her playlist for hours. And I thought, wow, now that's a power. But it reminded me that because we do have playlists, probably nobody knows what a mixtape is anymore. So we're calling this the next few weeks a summer mixtape. And I recognize that for some of you, well, you're all, a little older in here. But there is a subset of people. I can see a couple at the back running tech that are probably going, what in the world is a mixtape? So I have to tell you what a mixtape is. Back in the day, when I was younger, we didn't have Spotify. I know that's hard to imagine. We didn't have Apple Music either, or any of the streaming services. We had a radio. And we would tune in to our favorite radio station. For me, that was 1140 CKXL in Calgary. And we would listen to music. Sometimes we would go out and buy an album or an 8-track or a cassette. And we would listen to that. But as summer got closer and we know we're going to be going on holidays and stuff like that, we started to think that we needed to put together a mixtape, which had kind of like all the music that we liked on it. So, I don't know if you've listened to an album recently, but usually you don't like all the songs, or you like a couple of them, and some of them are okay, some of them you're wondering why they recorded them. So what the idea of the mixtape was it would take all the good songs off of the stuff that you had and put it on one tape, which you would take with you on vacation. Now, sometimes we hadn't bought that album yet that had that song that we wanted. So then we did a very strange ritual. We would sit in our rooms with our boombox or whatever and listen to the radio, waiting for that song to come on. And when it did, we quickly push record so we could put it onto our mixtape. And with that, we would get this tape filled with songs that we liked, all ready for vacation. Now, there was usually a couple of mixtapes because you had to have one that your parents might like to listen to, or at least would allow you to listen to on the car stereo. But there was also that other one that, had music that just you wanted on your Walkman or whatever. See, we had really strange devices back then. So I kind of look back in time I picked a year. I picked 1974. I was 14 in 1974. So I kind of picked that year and said, okay, so what would have been on my summer mixtape that year? I came up with a few artists. I mean, Elton John probably would have made it. A couple of songs from him. Paul McCartney and Wings. Bachman Turner Overdrive for sure. Golden Earring. They would have been on it. A little later on, maybe, there would have been additions from Rush, April Wine, and then later, even than that, there'd be Van Halen and Aerosmith and Bon Jovi and Def Leppard. Although those were usually bands my parents didn't really want to listen to. So that would have been more on the private one. There was probably some Beatles. They were a little bit older by then. You're probably wondering what Christian music I was listening to back then, and the reality was there really wasn't any. Nothing that I really liked back in the 70s. Petra still hadn't quite gotten to where they would get to. I do like Petra, but back in the mid-70s, even they were just not quite there yet. But I could fill a tape, and that would be my mixtape, and I would take it wherever we went. So we're calling this series Summer Mixtape, and we're not going to talk about music, just you're okay. But we are going to talk about Paul's letters. And so kind of the idea behind this series is I want to take a passage from a few of Paul's letters. So we're going to start off this morning in Galatians. Next week, I think it's Ephesians, and then Philippians, Colossians, Thessalonians. And then I get really ambitious on the last week of the series, and we're going to talk about Romans, Corinthians, and Philemon. But just not the whole letter, just kind of one of the highlight passages in the letter that Paul wrote. So today we're taking a look at a passage from Galatians, and what you need to understand is that there's a situation in Galatia that has got Paul worried. There is a group of people called the Judaizers. Now, to understand the Judaizers, you have to understand that in the early days of Christianity, we were really good at converting Jews. And we sometimes remember that Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea were Pharisees that had joined the Christian movement. But after the death and resurrection of Jesus, there was a lot more of these Pharisees that actually became Christians. So they gathered into this Christian movement, but they brought a whole ton of baggage with them. So part of it was all these rules. And what the Pharisees, which we actually now, after Jesus, we will start calling them Judaizers. What they did was they came into the church and said, but you've got to become a Jew before you can become a Christian. And that was the one message that Paul was preaching heavily against, especially to the Galatians. Because he felt that was a warped version of Christianity that said first you had to become a Jew. So he is, as he's writing Galatians, part of his concern is that these Judaizers have gotten into the Galatian church and has changed their message to the point where it's no longer a Christian message. And we're going to start by looking at Galatians chapter 3, verse 1. You foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Before your very eyes, Jesus Christ was clearly portrayed as crucified. That, if you're trying to fill in those blanks, that first blank is bless your heart. So, what happened was that the Galatians had started to preach rules. And I am amazed sometimes at how much we reflect that belief, because we often get hung up on the rules. I had a friend who became a Christian, and one of the first things he did was he wondered if he had to start worshiping on Saturday instead of Sunday. So Saturday is the Sabbath, Sunday is the Lord's Day. And for him, it was huge. He had to get this right, which one was the day that Christians should worship. And he didn't like me very much, because then I'd say, well, how about we worship on Thursday? Is there a problem there? But it becomes going back to the rules, and we're really good at rule keeping, often to our detriment, and that's exactly where the Galatian church is. Now, to understand this, yet we often have to understand that there is no such thing as objectivity. Did you know that? You carry your rose-colored glasses with you everywhere you go. everything that we do, everything that we believe is changed by the things that we have been taught, especially as we're growing up. And so we have all of these messages running through our mind that when we see something, we interpret it through those glasses. And we can work hard about being objective. We can, try our best to get rid of some of these things, but we never truly get to the point where we are objective, where we see just what is the truth. And so sometimes we get into an argument and somebody will tell us that our logic doesn't work here. And they're right. Unfortunately, we can usually say the same thing back to them. I have a professor who is on social media. He's actually quite active on social media, and he's often posting stuff. And I read a lot of his posts that he puts out. Some of them are theological. He's an Old Testament guy, so he's got a lot of theological knowledge that he posts. But in the last decade, there's also been a lot of posts about a certain politician from the United States who shall remain Donald Trump, and his thoughts about what Donald is doing. And it doesn't take you long from reading his post to understand that my professor does not like Donald. But a lot of his audience does. And so there are some amazing arguments that they can get into. And both sides are trying to speak logically. And I'm biased, I understand that. I usually can see better logic in my professor's argument than in the others. But it is a situation where we've got different colored glasses on. And it's hard to really get at what it is that is true. What is the truth? So I watched CNN a little bit, I think it was this week. I don't watch much CNN anymore. But I was watching a little bit of CNN, and there was this argument going on about who has stolen the most as a president. And the argument was that, the way that, at least as far as I could understand it, was that, lost his name now, Biden's son, Hunter Biden, stole millions by using his father's legacy to feed to line his pockets. And he stole millions that way. And the reply was, but Donald Trump Jr. has stolen billions by doing this. And then there's this uncomfortable moment where these two sides are arguing with each other, and you come to this place where the problem is that both stole. Both did something that they shouldn't have done. Whether it was millions or billions really doesn't matter. They're both wrong. And we can argue about that or not, and I don't think we'll ever get to what the truth is, because we've all got our glasses on. And truth is a little harder to get to. I was also watching a news show, and I was really surprised because the news anchor used the phrase, "bless your heart." And I'm going, man, I haven't heard that phrase for a long time. But there they were, and she, oh, bless your heart. And you know what that means, right? That guy that cuts you off in traffic, and he gets into your lane, you just about end up in his bumper, but you get the brakes on just in time. And instead of giving him the one finger wave of greeting, you say, oh, bless your heart. or the child. You know the one. Trying to get them to clean up their room is absolutely impossible. And they want to go to the mall. And the rule is you can't go to the mall until you clean up your room. And so reluctantly, the child gets up to his room or her room, and she starts to put away all of the stuff. And a few minutes later, she says, I've cleaned my room. Can I go to the mall now? And you come up and you look at the and you're amazed, but it looks amazing. It's perfect. And so you say, yes, you can. Now you can go to the mall. And so your child takes off to the mall. You go down and pick up some laundry and bring it up to their room, and you make that one rookie mistake of opening up the closet, and the whole room falls out of the closet. And as you're thinking about your dear child, you say, oh, bless your heart. Or, I don't know, maybe you're working on a task, and somebody comes in and they interrupt the task and they make it a little harder to do. And as they're walking out the door, you're saying, oh, bless your heart. What are you really saying? What a total idiot. That's really what it means. We just don't want to admit it. So Paul starts off this passage in Galatians by saying, you foolish Galatians. You foolish Galatians. Who has bewitched you? What? Don't you know better? Actually, I love what J.B. Phillips and how he interprets it. He says, oh, you dear idiots of Galatia, who saw Jesus Christ, the crucified, so plainly, who has been casting a spell over you. And you kind of in that phrase, oh, you dear idiots of Galatia, you get this idea of how much Paul loves the Galatians, but at the same time they're doing really stupid things. And the problem is that they've started to keep rules. And they start keeping rules as a way to get to God. And it doesn't work. We wish it would. Rules are easy. But that's not what God has called from us. The Judaizers would have argued that no rules is anarchy. So you got to have some rules. But for Paul, keeping the rules was just a way of trying to get a works righteousness, which he didn't believe in. And so he starts off by talking to the Galatians as, you foolish Galatians, you dear idiots of Galatia, or maybe, oh Galatia, bless your heart. But you're missing it. I love you, but you're missing it. And this is our story. This is who we are, our worldview. We are the dear idiots who are trying to keep the rules. I've often thought there's more about the contemporary church that connects with the Pharisees than with any other group in the Bible. Because we're trying to do the same thing, and we have the same expectations. Let me carry on from Galatians 3. I would like to learn just one thing from you. Did you receive the Spirit by the works of the law or by believing what you heard? Are you so foolish? Here he uses that word again. After beginning by means of the Spirit, are you now trying to finish by means of the flesh? Have you experienced so much in vain, if it really was in vain? So, again, I ask you, does God give you his Spirit and work miracles among you by the works of the law or by your believing what you heard? And that next blank is changing the rules. And this was the problem. It still is the problem for us. The rules are changing. The expectations are different. We're not where we're supposed to be. And we don't quite understand that. We don't quite get it. We are very much like the Galatians. A while back, I read an article on things never to say at a job interview. For those of you who might want to go out to get one, sometime in the future. These are things you should never say at a job interview. And there's a couple that were kind of related that kind of hit me. One was by Kim Bottomley. She was the president of Wellesley College, which is an all-girls college. And in case, again, this is an all-girls college that counts among their graduates Hillary Clinton and Madeleine Albright. So apparently it's a pretty good college. And this president says this: she didn't need to know that something can't be done. Don't tell me that it's impossible. I don't want to know that you can't do it. Do it. And man, in business, this is probably one of the biggest things we have to learn is that, there's no such thing as this can't be done. Long time ago, I was doing a series on Star Wars. So we were planning this series, and back then I did a lot of my own trailers for the series. So I was trying to figure out this trailer for the series. I didn't have a lot of money to spend. I didn't have a lot of, anything. So I was in my office at the church trying to figure out how I could shoot the trailer. And I came up with an idea. I got a Yoda bobblehead. I got my computer onto my desk, and I put it was a laptop, so I put a towel over the keyboard. I put Yoda in the middle of the towel, and behind him on the screen was a view of Dagobah, the place where Yoda went to hide. And I was trying to film this as part of my trailer. And as I'm trying to do this, the sound guy walked in and just started laughing at me. And I'm going, well, we needed to do this. Impossible. We can't say it's impossible. God's just got to do it. The wonder was that the sound man could impersonate Yoda a lot better than I could. He was really good at that backward talking. So he came in and he did the voiceover for the trailer. But we find ways to do what is impossible. As far as Kim Bottomley is, that's one of the essentials of being successful in anything, is you find ways to get it done. You don't say that it's impossible. Sarah Fink from Soul Cycle kind of agrees. She gives her thing is to never say is, I don't know. Now, she does have she has something to follow that up with. So her actual belief is never say, I don't know, unless you tag on to it, but I'll find out. So, I don't know, without, but I'll find out, never say that. But if you add, but I'll find out, you're okay. So, again, it's kind of the same idea. This is not what's impossible. And actually, I think that company execs would rather have somebody that says, I don't know, but I can find out. A lot better than a lot better than somebody who's going to lie that they know when they really don't. Paul's question to the Galatians is this: how did you become part of the Christian community? What happened? How did you become part of the church? And Paul knows the answer. They believed by faith and became part of the movement. And that's okay. We have this, and I've mentioned this before, we used to have this idea, that to join the church, to be part of the movement, we would have to go from believe, behave, and then we could belong. So the idea was somebody would come and they would believe in Jesus. And after they had believed for a while, their actions would start to reflect what they believed, so they would start to behave. And once they started to behave, they could belong. And there's a lot of church pastors and theologians out there that say that is actually backwards. The church should be a place where you can belong first. Where you can come in and you can be part of the church right off the get-go. As you experience belonging, then you will come to believe. And as you believe, you will behave. But behave is way down the road. And I've wondered about how that would change us if that's the way we were. Come on in. We don't care. You belong. You're looking for a place to belong. This is it. Share with us. We'll share with you. Eventually you'll come to believe. And then you'll behave. But we're not going to focus on that. What we really want to focus on is that you will come and belong. You will be part of what we do. How would that change baptism? Would you have perfect behaving people that were being baptized? Or would that come down the road? I don't know. These are questions that I kind of struggle with. But from the evidence that we have in the book of Galatians, it's clear that the Galatians were putting believe first. You have to believe. You have to come to the point where you believe like I do. And here's the problem with that. We can always find places where we disagree with each other. And if we disagree with each other on some spot, then we will always find a reason to leave the community rather than stay. And that's a problem. The Christian church shouldn't be a place that's getting smaller and smaller as people who believe differently find smaller and smaller communities to be part of. It should be a place where our beliefs are shared with each other, even in disagreement. And we love because we belong. And there's nobody that can tell us that we don't. Because God has called us, and we do. So belong first. So, also Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. Understand then that those who have faith are children of Abraham. That last blank is what we believe. What we believe. So Paul says, listen, Abraham believed God. And that was credited to him as righteousness. And he's right. He's got it. But what does belief really mean? That blank is, I don't think I gave that to you, did I? What we believe. So old people make rules, right? Can we agree with that? Old people usually make the rules. Younger people have to put up with the rules until they become old people. And then they can write the rules. So we are a pain to you as long as we're, as we're around making rules that you don't want. One of my favorite scientists is Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he is an atheist, I get that. It's okay. I can like people who don't believe in God. I hope we all can. But he makes this comment. He says, and it's pointed right at us, by the way. This comment is pointed right at us. The good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it. Yeah? The good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it. You cannot change scientific principle by simply not believing in it. If it is true, then it will exist no matter what we think. We often have the argument on whether or not it's true. But if it's true, it doesn't matter what you think. The same is true about God. If God is true, then it doesn't matter whether you believe or not. It's true. He exists. So this goes for absolutely everything that is true. But we sometimes struggle with that. So God is not Santa Claus. Again, hope you realize that. The myth of Santa Claus is that he can be made stronger by Christmas spirit, right? So if you have lots of Christmas spirit, then Santa Claus is real. But if you have no Christmas spirit, then he's not. Well, God is real no matter what. He doesn't care. This is just what it means to be living on this planet. I've often thought to people who say, well, I don't believe in a God that would do blank. And I go, fine. But you do realize that if that is God, whether or not you believe in him doesn't change that. There is believing in something, and then there's just believing. And sometimes believing in something is dangerous because we can alter what it is that we believe in. Where if we just believe, then it is, we just believe. God, take me wherever you want me to go. Belief implies that we trust. James makes this comment, you believe that there is one God? Good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. They believe in a God, but they know they're on the wrong side from him. Where if we just simply believe in God, we have a trust that God will do what God will do, but we will be part of that. Because we are part of his family. And what we need is not belief in something. We just simply need to flatly believe God. And allow him to take us where he wants to lead us. All this is getting me someplace. And I hope you're with me on this. Because we have a problem. And it goes back to the Judaizers. We have put a whole bunch of rules together that in the end really don't matter. We've done a lot of stuff. We've made a lot of barriers in the church that don't need to be there. But we were taught that they should be there. Or we thought that we should believe in that kind of an idea. And all this is coming from the Judaizers. And it's made us the same as the Galatians. We're off the track. Now here's the problem. Under God's system, we believe in God. He shapes our lives. He shapes our lives to the point where good emerges from it. But it's not because of the rules. It's not because we're trying to keep a list of things that we should do and shouldn't do. It's simply God has changed our heart, so that is what flows out of our lives. And this should be what we're trying to get to. As Christians, this is the point that we need to get to, where it's not so much work to keep the rules, but where we can ignore the rules and just say, God, allow your love, allow your feelings to flow out of my being so that I do what is right. And I think it's exactly what Paul was trying to get to with the Galatians. The Galatians had fallen down, or had fallen into the trap set by the Judaizers that said that they had to do certain things. Men had to be circumcised because they had to be Jewish. They had different food laws. They did a whole bunch of stuff that was never intended to be the rules. And Paul's saying, who has lied to you? The goal is never that. It's to allow God to change you. It's allow God to come into your life and make you into a new person. One that will take you where you need to go. And you'll keep the rules. Well, at least a few of them. But because the heart has been changed that's inside, and now you have God's desires flowing out of you. So you'll love. Because God loves you. You will love others. You will hurt over injustice in the world. You will want to be part of feeding the hungry. Because God has changed you, not because there's a rule that says you have to do it, but because you are following that path, because God is inside of you. Too often I'm scared. This is where I trip up, is that we want to follow the rules. The rules are easy. They really are. Let me give you this example. I don't know whether you realize this or not, but when you're driving down a road, there's numbers on the side of the road that indicate how fast you should be traveling, right? So sometimes there are various numbers. In Edmonton they're 40 or they're 30. On the road to Calgary they're 110, except I think there's now a stretch of highway where it's 120. They're trying something out. But did you know that number's not absolute? The intention of that number is to set it as a maximum. But if driving conditions don't make that speed safe, then that number can be lower. You're not allowed to go down number 2 highway south at 110 kilometers an hour when there's fog and ice on the road. You're supposed to use your common sense and figure out that 110 is probably a little too fast and you need to slow down. But we suck at that. We want the 110. As I was driving through BC on the Trans-Canada, they have variable speed zones. Have you seen those? Where it changes. They say, listen, the weather's not good enough for 100 right now, so we're going to lower the speed limit to 80 or 90 or whatever, because they know that we love to follow rules and we can't be trusted to just drive safe in bad conditions. So they have these changeable signs. And you're supposed to follow the speed limit of the last changeable sign that you saw. Rules are easy to follow. Saying, God, change me. God, I want to be yours. Help me to grow so that I can follow rules that you want. I can be who it is that you need me to be. And if that was true, this is where we really get in trouble. We could throw away the rule book because we would all be doing exactly what God wanted us to do. Whenever somebody gives you a rule, and that whenever somebody says, you know what, as a good Christian, you should be doing blank, the first question that should come to your mind is, how does this rule help me serve God better? Or how does this rule help me love my neighbor better? Because that's all that really matters. Jesus said that the two best rules, the top two, the most important rules, were love God with all your soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Do this, and you have fulfilled the law and the commandments. You fulfilled it all if you love God and love your neighbor. And God is up in heaven saying, they get it. They understand. Oh, foolish VantagePoint. Bless your heart. You're trying so hard to follow the rules, but you've lost Jesus in the mix. I need you to come back. Come back to Jesus. Remember, he was crucified for you. He changed everything. It is this that we believe in. Galatians 5:1 says, it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. When we become followers of rules more than anything else, all we've really done is become slaves one more time. And we've done it voluntarily. And we do this in so many areas of our lives. And it's unnecessary. God has set us free. We don't need to walk back to our own slavery of rules. We need to follow the heart of God and just simply love God with everything that we are and love each other with everything that we have. And all of the laws will be kept. All the rules will be fulfilled. Let me pray. Father, it is a hard teaching. But we know that you love us and that you have poured out your love for us. While we were still sinners, while we didn't believe in you, you believed in us. And you brought us to where we needed to be. God, continue to lead us. Help us to understand what it is that you desire from us. Help us to follow you. Even in those moments when the rules seem to indicate we should do something else. Help us to love you with everything that we are and everything that we will ever be. Help us to love our neighbors. Help us to love our enemies. Help us to love everyone we come in contact with because we know you love them. And that should be enough for us. Make it enough. Lead us into that kind of a relationship with you so that we can stop being the foolish and become the godly. We need your strength if we are going to achieve this. And so we pray for that strength. And we thank you for the love that you continue to spread over top of us. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.